Discourse regarding drama is always interesting to me. It always gets extreme reactions. You either are absolutely for it and you love it and you defend it, or you absolutely hate it and you're absolutely against it. Despite that, drama content always does well. Whether it's reality TV or celebrity or influencer drama channels, all of them do wonders. In fact, actually, global reality TV production markets are valued at $14.8 billion. So clearly, despite the different reactions, people seem to actually consume it quite frequently. So I actually want to understand this a little bit better. Why are we attracted to gossip, and why do we view it negatively? Finally, is it ethical to consume content that is focused on drama? Before we get into this, welcome back to Limoni. First of all, hi guys, welcome back. I know it's been 2 weeks, maybe 3 now, that since I've last dropped a video. I'm really sorry, but I was abroad and I didn't have space to film and write and do all of those things. So, but hopefully we're back on schedule from this point onwards. Hopefully. It's been pretty hot lately, but yeah, it still hasn't reached the usual peak heat wave of summer, so I'm actually very grateful for that, and hopefully it won't happen this summer, though every summer I'm hopefully this doesn't happen, and it always happens. So I know it's inevitable, but it hasn't happened yet, so I'm actually pretty happy about it. So hopefully I'm not jinxing it. Hold on, knock on wood. Okay, first I think we need to talk about drama and gossip and the psychology behind it. Why do we love gossip and drama, and why are we attracted to it? If you look it up, it's actually something that we have done for a very long time, actually over the course of history. Back in the day, gossiping was just a way to exchange information and usually used to warn people in the tribe about certain situations or certain people. This article basically says it all. Gossip gets a bad rep, but believe it or not, it's a crucial role in human evolution. Evolutionary psychologists contend gossip keeps our forebears alive. In the days of hunting and gathering, knowing who to trust was a cheat mattered. Gossiping helped people bond with one another, protect themselves against cheats, and form coalitions. Think about it. If 2 people in your group were fighting, you naturally want to know why and who's at fault, who's the victim. This is helpful because it helps us navigate through social situations and prevents us from making the same mistake over and over again. So as you can see, this was just a survival mechanism, and we've had it for a very, very, very long time. It was a way for us to bond. Sharing secrets helps create deep bonds between people, and also it keeps us protected. It allows us to watch out for things that could harm us in the future. And honestly, gossiping in its way is essentially just research. Even back in the day, it was just research because we didn't have access to the things that we have access to right now, which helps us understand and have better forms of information. Back in the day, they needed each other for that kind of research, right? But it also helps us understand social context as better, because when we kind of see that unfold in front of us, we can observe different people's behaviors and look for the right and proper way to act when we encounter certain people. If, for example, if you're interacting with a certain personality and it's very specific, you would know okay, treating them like that person treated them is not gonna work, because we know something shitty happened when they did that. So it essentially helps us understand different ways in which we can interact with people, and so it feels really good for us to get exposed to as many different things as possible, so that we can understand a little bit better how to go about it when we are actually encountering the same situation. It also, I think, feels good because we experience emotions in a somewhat safe environment. For example, we live vicariously through someone without actually having to be personally involved in that situation. We feel sad and we feel happy for these people, right? But in the end, it kind of exists on a screen or exists with your friend, and once that conversation is over, or when you close the screen, it's over. It's no longer exists in your real life. So it helps you feel those emotions and feel those things in a very safe, closed environment where it doesn't actually have to have real life consequences. Drama and gossiping in its core isn't necessarily inherently bad thing. Another thing that I think really, really important to note, which I think is very important, because you cannot really talk about gossiping and drama without talking about women, okay? Because it is something that is deeply linked to women. It is a trait that is often linked to women. So it's very important for us to discuss that part. But back in the day, women would actually gossip. Gossiping was essentially just sharing information. People would just gather around and talk to each other about their husbands, the community, and pretty much anything that mattered. And it was definitely a way to keep each other alive. It was essentially a survival tactic. And according to an article titled "Is Gossiping Feminist?", something worthy of note is the role of women throughout history in the transmission of culture, the importance they played in maintaining the fabric of their community by encouraging personal interactions. The strengths and bond of a community relied on the amount and the quality of these interactions, whilst men contributed to their society in alternative ways. Neighborly communications to gather and share information was considered women's talk, and it continued to maintain an important role amongst societies throughout the Middle Ages as a way to protect and preserve the community. Sadly, over time, these actions were undermined and villainized by both the church and the local authorities in an attempt to lessen their importance and their influence. It was essentially just information gathering, and it typically changed with time, right? Because there are some cases where women would share very important information that will help other women within communities, and that was not always perceived positively by authorities, right? And this was actually talked about extensively in the book called Caliban the Witch. If you haven't read it, it's an amazing book, highly recommend. But essentially they discuss the context of witch hunts back in the day and how it was majorly done in order to discipline women and contain them as much as possible and to make sure they would be sort of compliant with the New World Order. In fact, in this article, they actually discuss the specific thing. Is it a coincidence that the word gossip, as we understand it today, developed around the same time as the prosecution of witchcraft increased? Federici, who's by the way the author of Caliban the Witch, remarks that female friendships were one of the targets of the witch hunts, showing the correlation between the developing context of gossip and the prosecution of women, as those who displayed independence and agency threatened the religious aims of the period. The religious fear that provoked the witch trials is the same fear that changed the perception of gossip to be something bitter and worthy of criticism. Gossip was a powerful and influential tool in a woman's arsenal to utilize during a time when they had very little power within an overtly patriarchal society. By devaluing the dialogue shared between women, the influence this had on communities, this valuable sacred tool stifled with any authority it bestowed upon its users. So obviously, as we can see, women are deeply, deeply connected to gossip. And oftentimes, I just need to point this out, whenever we criticize gossip, it is typically rooted in a little bit of a misogyny, where people kind of perceive gossiping, which is a woman's thing, right, to be an inherently bad thing or an inherently unmoral or unethical thing. So I think it's important to point this out as we speak about drama and gossip, because it is essentially a feminine thing to do. Now that we have the context necessary, let's ask the question, is it ethical to consume drama? It's a little bit of a harder question to answer, to be honest. But in its core, we will always gossip. It is a human trait, okay? It is something that we will always do. But humans do a lot of things naturally, and that doesn't necessarily mean it is a good or an ethical thing. But while looking it up, I often found very extreme reactions. Those who were against and those for gossiping. So I'm going to be talking about these two extremes and the two different ones, and then we can maybe have our own conclusions at the end of the video. So those who view gossip positively see it as a natural course of action that people have developed to stay alive. Gossiping for these people is just a tool. It can be used for good and it can be used for bad. So it's not inherently unethical. Many for gossiping remind people that many revolutionary actions came to be due to gossiping and due to sharing information in that kind of way. It essentially creates a community where people meet up and talk about specific topics that may be bad, may be unallowed in other spaces, and do something about it. Figure out ways in order to do something about it and make some revolutionary actions. As well, in an article where they're essentially debating the ethicality of gossip, called "Is it ethical to gossip?" Those who were gossip said that when we use the time with friends to build community, if we choose to do so, and what that is essentially what most gossip does. It is intimate talk with another person, and it is a basic human need and strengthens our sense of belonging. The bottom line is that not all gossip is bad for you. It is what you use that time to say that is important. This was written by an evolutionary psychologist called Robin Dumper. So she basically argues that it is essentially a good thing. It can create really deep bonds with people and it create really positive outcomes if you choose to make it that way. So gossiping is not inherently unethical, but if you choose to make it unethical, it can be. But you can also choose it to make it very ethical and make it very positive. But those who are against it actually disagree with this talking point. I've saw a lot of it, but in the article also, Hannah Rose, who was a psychotherapist, argues against this. Okay, she says that we might tell ourselves that sharing gossip helps us bond with others because in the moment we feel a sense of belonging, but it's a false sense of closeness. What the researcher Brené Brown calls a common enemy intimacy. In fact, she argues that it does the opposite. In her view, she thinks that gossip erodes genuine connection and trust. As I can see that a little bit, if you surround yourself with people who constantly talk about other people in any capacity, right, you will become self-conscious around them. And so I feel like it's understandable, that kind of point of view, but I don't think all gossip fits sort of that category, but it can be that case. But essentially they mainly focus on the feelings of those being gossiped on. So let's say their reputation hurt, right? You can potentially ruin their reputation. Or they would talk about how their feelings might get hurt and they get told what you're saying about them. So that is usually the thing that they argue for, is that it doesn't really build community. It builds a fake sense of community, and it usually creates really negative emotions for people who are being gossiped against. That is usually what people who are against gossiping say. Another thing I do want to note is that gossiping actually can have a negative effect on our mental health. Most gossip is neutral and information rather than being harmful, but sometimes gossip can actually be what causes a lot of people to develop anxiety. Actually, I think a lot of people develop, and this is my own personal opinion, just based on what I've thought, is that I think some people develop a fear of perception from gossip because they can see how much people speak about other people, and they kind of get anxious and conscious of every action they do. So yeah, that could be the case. But sometimes gossip can feel very ambiguous, and so I think some people might feel like they can relate to some of the gossip and then they get very defensive over it, and that's essentially what causes a lot of people to feel anxious, is because they feel like they're being called out. They also sometimes lead to isolation of others, as you feel like you cannot trust anybody. So having heard both sides, I am going to tell you guys what I think about gossip. I personally think gossiping is not inherently unethical. I think it can be used for bonding, for creating strong personal bonds with other people and creating community. It's also a great tool to help others stay away from certain people who might not be as great, or certain situations that people need to watch out for that in some cases maybe they cannot speak about. For example, if you live under authoritarian governments or places where certain things are not allowed to be shared due to authorities, I think that gossiping can actually be a very, very wonderful thing to have, so that we can share information and get things across to people. I also think it's a great social reform in a way if we talk badly about certain behaviors, if it is used properly. Okay, but when we talk badly about certain behaviors, we can create a culture that will reject those actions and also encourage others to avoid them. However, I do think that we have to tread very, very lightly. Sometimes gossip can lead to harmful outcomes, and it's not just for the people being gossiped on, it's also the people who are actively gossiping, right? Pushing people away from others and creating toxic environments can actually cause people to isolate, so that can lead to very unethical outcomes. But anyway, that is all from me today. I want to know what you guys think. Do you guys think that gossiping or drama is inherently unethical? Is it ethical to consume that content? Is it ethical to watch reality TV? I don't think it's unethical. I do think that it is okay to do so, and I think that's something we cannot necessarily get rid of. I do think that it can be harmful if we're actively trying to destroy someone by spreading false information. You're lying, right? But if you are simply relaying information, experiences, and feelings that you felt towards certain people while being with that certain person, I do think it's okay and it's valid, and it can be a very good tool. Like I said, it's a tool, okay? You can either do good with it or you can do bad with it. And it's very important for us to tread lightly while we do it, but also not maybe villainize it, because I don't think it's necessarily evil. That's the conclusion I have come to. I really, really want to know what you guys think. I would love to hear that in the comments below. Hopefully I'm gonna go back to schedule. So maybe I'll see you guys next week. I'll see you guys soon. All right. Bye. Also, do not forget to like and subscribe. It's very important for the channel. See you guys next time. Bye bye.